because you want to make a hex bolt or something along that lines. Sorry about that, the timer ran out and I had to start recording again. Sorry about that. You can go ahead and change that there. We're just going to go 16. So now that's basically a couple different ones. But anyway, going back to it, you'll notice as I click each one of those on the material page, this is the only one that has it. If I import into Unreal, it's going to go, okay, there's no material here, there's no material here. I'm just going to assign it this number, and that's the material it has. It's going to take this one and go, oh, that's a different material, and go, here you go, here's a second material. So when I import it, I'm going to be able to set one material here, here, and here individually. Sometimes it's good to have that, sometimes it's not. For the purpose of the tutorial so far, we don't really want that, and you also want to kind of control that yourself, so you can just hit negative. The one thing about it, too, is you don't want to add a material. Come here. Here we go, hit new. You don't want to add a material and actually import one into Blender, and then import this material or mesh that you're making into Unreal. It's just not going to work. It's not going to look right. It's going to get all distorted, shaded off wrong, and everything. You're going to want to edit it separately, either in the Unreal Engine, which I believe has its own editor of some sort you can use, or you want to do that in like Paint or Photoshop or something like that. There's a couple different ways you can do that. A little later on in some of those videos, we're going to kind of play with that a little bit. I'm not really great at doing that kind of Photoshop. So if somebody out there is watching this going, hey, I know how to do that, I will have you do that video if you don't care, or at least record the screen capture and I'll do the audio over it. Whatever. Anyway, getting back to what we were talking about, I deleted out the material because I don't want to assign more than one. I'm actually going to go ahead and just leave it there, because when we import this in the next little bit, when we get into the more advanced stuff, you'll want to see what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're just going to move some of these pieces one on top of one another just to kind of put them all together so they're all in one little line. Going back into tab, there's a couple other things you can do here. Go on the cylinder that we've made, and I just kind of drug it up over here. You don't have to unless you want to. I just manually drug it. It's kind of harder for you guys to line everything up with what I'm doing. So I'm just going to drag it up by 0. Then we're going to do negative 0.5. Then we're going to go 4, so that puts us up there. So that just kind of puts us off center there. And then the Y, we're going to go back to 0. We're just going to drag everything right in line. I'm going to put this one at 2 and 0. So now everything's lined up. Oh, nope, not what I wanted to do. There we go. Yeah, there's sometimes the interface gets a little tricky like that, and it'll want to do some stuff. You can always right-click somewhere real quick, and that'll get you out of it if it happens to, you happen to hit the shift key or something while you're manipulating some stuff, and it just starts doing some funky things. Going back into edit mode on the cube, we're going to actually go back to that real quick. I wanted to show you guys that center point thing I was just talking about. Go back to face mode and then select this left face over here. The green arrow should be out, and you'll notice that's a positive 1. If I come on this side, I'm on the right side of it now, or left, depending on which way you're looking at it. Top down, doesn't really matter. Either way, the arrow is pointing in towards the cube, so now I'm on the negative side. I'm just going to go ahead and 0 that. And then for some reason, this is just negative 0.003. I'm going to 0 that too. It doesn't have much of an effect, but you see, there goes the fancy stuff again. 0, and then I'm going to 0 that. You'll notice how the sides is now perfectly aligned on each one of these planes. And then again, the red arrow should be pointing inward, so we're going to 0 that one off. And there we go. Now when I tab out of it, you'll notice my point is here. This is important because when you import, Unreal automatically assigns this X by this Y right here, this point, as your pivot point. So wherever that pivot, wherever your objects are placed in relation to that pivot point, it's going to automatically assign that as it. So I always try to work off of everything in the one corner at 0, 0, and then kind of work my way out into the positive Z, X, Y axis. Just makes things a little simpler. You may find it a little bit better and a little bit easier to work in a different manner, having this in the middle or somewhere else. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what you're doing. You can also rotate now. We're just going to show you how that works off that point. So rather than it doing like it did earlier, I've now hit 45 degrees off of that point rather than it being in the middle and kind of rotating it in some kind of weird ways. But anyway, that's how that will work. Okay. Another thing you can do, this is kind of an important one for when you have hidden faces. I'm going to show you that real quick. Come back out of edit mode. Oop. Move this cube up here to the top. Kind of move them over a little bit. Now the face is hidden. Let's say I'm in edit mode and I want to edit that bottom face. How would you go about clicking it? I can just randomly click it, and I guess I'm on it. I'm pretty sure I am. I mean, I know I am from using the software, but let's say I want to be able to see it. Hit the Z key. Now I can see it. And again, this is a really basic operator that allows you to see the wireframe. You can also come down here to the left. You'll notice this button had changed. If I hit Z again, it goes back. And I can just go back and forth, back and forth. You can click it and you can go to solid. Now let's say we have more than one material applied. I can click material, it'll apply it. It's going to look black, but again, we don't really care about that because we're not applying any materials. And it's black because we haven't rendered it. Again, this is a 3D modeling software. And then there's your texture, and you can tell here that this has no texture, but this one does have a texture or material applied to it. So we don't really want that when we import, unless you just absolutely need it. Like say you're making a light or something and you want a completely different material applied to the light. But this just kind of, again, it puts you that example so you can see it. So we're going to hit the Z. And one thing to talk about too, I wanted to touch base on with you guys, is when you have a face that's hidden like that, you're going to want to delete it. And the reason you want to, not vertices, faces, that is your face. You want to delete the face. There we go. If you do that on accident and you just did what I did, hit Control Z, that'll back you up, and then you can undo what you just did. Now the face is gone. So now if we go back and hit the Z key again, get out of edit mode, you'll notice it's not there. But you're not going to see that. I'm just going to kind of move my camera so you can see the inside and see how it's gone. We're not really going to be rendering that in Unreal. You're never going to see it unless you happen to be inside the room. You know, like this is a giant sphere or a giant mess in your mesh or something. But if it's just something kind of small and you're never going to see it, I would say just go ahead and leave it out. Delete it. Get rid of anything you're never going to see. Just saves you some computing time, some memory size, that sort of thing. It's just one of those general things you kind of want to do to make things a little simpler, a little easier. If you've done that, let's say you've been working away, and this is another basic operator I wanted to throw at you just so you'll know about it, and I'll touch base again with it whenever we make the other floor grates that we had. If you hit the space key, that'll bring up this menu right here, and you can do all kinds of things like delete, and then it'll allow you to delete different things. You can also do make face, and you'll see it says make edge slash face. If we just click that, that face will come back. So now that face that we deleted did come back. There are limits though to that, and to that point I'm going to show you something else, and this will make a little more sense. Let's say I want to subdivide this. Let's say I want more edges. Actually, before I do that, let's backpedal just a little bit. If we go to Tools on the top left, you'll see you can do an extrude. If you hit Alt-E, you can hit region or individual faces. In this case, we're going to do face. So now I can move my mouse around, and I'm going to have another face I can extrude. The cool thing about that is it automatically subdivides it. The bad thing about that is it does automatically subdivide it. So now instead of having just one cube with a long face, I'll end up with a bunch. Sometimes you may need to be able to do both of these faces at the same time, so now you'll have to select them and you'll have to sit here and manually edit them. Can be a bit of a pain. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Just again depends on what you're going to do with it. But now if I hit Alt-E again and do region, and region pretty much does about the same thing. Now I can extrude it again. Now I've got this little oblong looking piece. Let's do it again. Select that face, hit E. You can actually just hit E as a real shortcut. Now I've got like a C-shaped thing. Okay. Now let's say that's not good enough. I want to do a little bit more than that. If you hit the vertex button, shift, 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 and you can, I think you can do this on the face as well. You can come over here and hit subdivide, and you'll notice now that if I go to point mode, it has placed a point. Now again, I'm just calling it point mode. I think its correct term was vertex select, but we're just going to call it points. That's what they look like. now I have another face. So if I go